You are looking at Westminster Abbey in central London, the site of British coronations going back to 1066. King Charles III will be the 40th monarch crowned inside that historic and elegant church. Hi, and thanks for joining us. I'm Goomansingh, Europe Bureau Chief for Global News. This rooftop location is Global's home for all of our coronation coverage, including the big day, May 6th. That's when together we will witness history. The last coronation took place before many of us were even born, before my mom was born. Queen Elizabeth II was anointed and crowned 70 years ago. Now, that ancient and religious ceremony will be performed again as the crown passes to her son. Looking at the road to coronation, we'll highlight how the service for King Charles and his wife Camilla will unfold. We'll hear from an author who spent months with the Queen Consort back when she was a duchess, and learn about the woman behind all of the headlines and how her image has evolved. We'll also look at the monarchy and how it has evolved, its relevance today, and how the family accumulated its wealth and power. But first, let's talk about the ceremony and the spectacle around it. Thousands from the armed forces will be on parade, and 60 aircraft will take part in a coronation fly-past. The King's procession will make its way from Buckingham Palace here to Westminster Abbey. It's roughly a 2-kilometer long journey, and the trip will feature the most regal of rides. The oldest and newest royal carriages will be on the road on May 6th. This one is the newest one. It's the Diamond Jubilee coach given to Queen Elizabeth in 2014.
I think what's really extraordinary when it's on the move is that it's actually really tall. It's significantly taller than any car on the road today, and it has this huge gold crown on the top, amazingly carved with oak from HMS Victory, one of the Royal Navy's 18th century flagships. And it's incredibly exciting, this gold coach carrying the sovereign, beautifully lit inside so that they can be seen by the crowds on Coronation Day.
The second coach they'll ride in as they return to the palace is even bigger, a stately 7 meters long and nearly 4 meters high. It is so heavy, 8 horses are needed to pull it.
It's the second oldest working coach in this country. It was built in 1762, which makes it an incredibly old working coach in the world. There are very few monarchies which have retained coaches working of this age, and therefore it's an incredibly special thing to see, really harking back to a couple of centuries earlier, a world we probably can't imagine today of carriages and horses on the streets.
Like many things with the royals, tradition plays a big part, and we'll see that in this ceremony. The coronation chair will obviously be a focal point. It was built to house a priceless stone. Perhaps you've heard of the Stone of Destiny, or as the Scottish call it, the Stone of Scone. It's been used for coronations in England going back hundreds of years, but before that, it was used to inaugurate Scottish monarchs. That was until the English stole it as spoils of war. The Stone of Scone, named after the medieval village in Perthshire where it's believed to have originated and where in ancient times Scottish kings were crowned.
It's really an iconic object.
Archaeologist Rachel Pickering calls it a symbol of statehood. With the coronation of King Charles III, the Stone of Scone is having a renaissance.
Essentially stripped from the Scottish king and taken to England sort of as war booty, as a trophy of Edward I's victory over Scotland.
War booty from 1296. King Edward I had the precious stone, also referred to as the Stone of Destiny, incorporated into a new throne at Westminster Abbey, starting its use in coronations in England. But in 1950, there was a robbery.
It was during the early hours of Christmas morning that the historic Stone of Scone was removed from the coronation chair in Westminster Abbey.
Somehow, 4 Glasgow University students broke in and stole it.
I have no idea how they managed it. Such a great big heavy object. They apparently dragged it on a coat along the tiles through Westminster Abbey.
4 months later, it showed up at the Arbroath Abbey in Scotland. But it wasn't until 1996 that the UK government and Queen Elizabeth II agreed it should remain in the north. When the Stone of Scone was officially returned to Scotland, 10,000 people lined up here along the Royal Mile and watched it make its way back to Edinburgh Castle, where it has lived ever since under lock and key. Legend has it the stone was used by the biblical figure Jacob. It possibly traveled to Egypt, Spain, and later Ireland. But Historic Environment Scotland is confident of its local origins. Since its return to Scotland, experts have been testing and analyzing the stone. High-resolution imaging recently revealed something resembling Roman numerals etched into the sandstone, leading to a new area of research.
I hope that now we have an opportunity to celebrate the object and to emphasize just how interesting and important this is.
A rock-solid link to past, present, and future. For many, the coronation will be a day of celebration, but some have a different view. Here in the UK, in Canada, and around the world, the royals, what they represent, even what they wear, can stir up painful emotions. Take the Koh-i-Noor diamond. It's been removed from Queen Mary's crown, which the Queen Consort will wear Coronation Day. The diamond was seized from a child king in 1849 after the Indian subcontinent was colonialized. Indian parliamentarians first wrote in 2000 asking for it to be returned, but India is only one of several countries that lay claim to the jewel. Farah Nasser reports on the infamous diamond and other crown jewels.
This 105-carat stone is considered one of the most powerful symbols of conquest. The Koh-i-Noor diamond's light is as stunning as its history. Shrouded in controversy, some even say it's cursed. For centuries, the Koh-i-Noor was looted and bartered through bloody battles spanning a series of kingdoms.
It was given to Britain as part of a treaty in the 19th century between the Maharaja, the ruler of the Sikh Empire, and Queen Victoria. But the Maharaja was a child. There are questions about how the conditions of this treaty were negotiated.
The Koh-i-Noor was first set in Queen Mary's crown and later replaced with a replica. The original was moved to the Queen Mother's crown, where it is now. After the death of Queen Elizabeth II, India renewed calls for the diamond's repatriation. Camilla, the Queen Consort, has chosen to swap the contested jewel in her coronation crown with one from South Africa.
They're using the Cullinan diamonds, I say plural because they were cut from the largest diamond ever found on Earth.
While the Cullinan isn't the same symbol of plunder, the original stone, uncut, the size of a human heart, was mined on stolen land and gifted to King Edward VII by South Africa's colonial government.
Those diamonds there were gotten through the spilling of blood of innocent people whose only crime was, firstly, that they were native to that country.
Some in South Africa believe the stone is a symbol of Britain's exploitation and its lasting impact that led to deep racial inequality.
It is very important that the previous colonizers and the current colonizers, they need to take responsibility. Otherwise, there will never be justice.
Instead, the stone will be in the spotlight on Coronation Day.
Isn't it a farce that it was Indian diamond, now they have South African diamond? So what is the difference between India and South Africa? Not this colony, but that colony.
This coronation comes at a critical time for the monarchy, and those close to the king say he understands that.
And when I think of the king, I think of someone who's consistently thinking about how do I reach out, how do I build a bridge, instead of how do I divide.
The tale of these two stones may be a start. An exhibition opening less than 3 weeks after the coronation at the Tower of London has the Koh-i-Noor and its history at the center. How clear the stone's story will be told is the question. Farah Nasser, Global News, Toronto.
Accurately reflecting British history is something King Charles has talked about. He's also supported efforts to educate people when it comes to slavery through art. And in March, King Charles agreed to open up the royal collection and royal archives to researchers. There's a multi-year project now underway examining links between the monarchy and slavery in the 17th and 18th centuries. One expert on the transatlantic slave trade says the move by the king is a step towards acknowledgement on a personal level.
The fact that they're opening up the archives, and the royal family don't often open up their archives. They're quite secretive about what archives that they are. So this says something, I think, quite significant about how important they think this particular issue, their involvement as a family in the slave trade and in slavery, is to their standing today, particularly in regard to what they see as themselves as a family and as an institution which is encouraging racial solidarity, which is open to multiculturalism, all those things. So it is something which I think is very welcome on the part of the palace.
The sovereign faces pressure to meaningfully address historic wrongs by his family that still have implications on people's daily lives. Pressures that were present when his mother was queen, but she was treated in a different manner, widely respected because of her years of service. His Majesty has had a rough start, having been egged on 2 separate occasions, and he hasn't even been king for a year yet. The first time it happened was in York when he was going to unveil a statue of his late mother. And he was met with chants of "Not My King" at the Commonwealth Day service just out front of Westminster Abbey. King Charles may not be the most beloved figure, but that is something he has in common with his wife. I sat down with author Angela Levin to talk about the woman who has gone from mistress to monarch. Levin, in fact, describes the Queen Consort as natural, warm, and brave.
I think she's brave because she hung on for 35 years before she got a proposal. I think you're going to be brave to wait that long. I think she's brave because she manages somehow to cope with people saying awful things about her, whether it was Diana saying she was a Rottweiler, or whether it's Prince Harry saying she's a villain.
You alluded to it there, and I'm curious if we can kind of hone in on, the late Prince Philip wasn't necessarily a fan, the Queen Mother wasn't a fan, the late Queen Elizabeth wasn't a fan for the longest time. So what did she do to win them over?
She didn't try and persuade them that she had value, but what she did, she started doing lots of charities. When Prince Charles actually said, he wasn't going to stop seeing her, he put his foot down with Camilla, so they knew, nothing they could do about that. And the Queen realised that she was very dutiful to the whole royal family, and she worked very hard. Plus, and it's a very big plus, she had made Charles extremely happy, very relaxed, and so he was doing his job in a much better way.
Well, love them or hate them, come May 6th, the world will be watching the royals as the coronation unfolds just across the way. Donna Friesen will be here hosting Global National, as well as a big network special on May the 6th. That will be at 5 a.m. Eastern, 2 a.m. Pacific, so set your alarm. I'm Crystal Goomansingh on behalf of our production team here in London and back in Canada. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll leave you now with some more beautiful images from inside Westminster Abbey.